Okay, thanks, Dylan. Good morning, uh, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third and final webinar in our preview series leading up to our 30th annual ARC Industry Leadership Forum in Orlando next month. I look forward to seeing you there, but these are teaser webinars. We will share some insights that we will be expanding on greatly next month at the forum. I'm Colin Masson, Director of Research for Industrial AI here at ARC. And for at least the past year, we've been living through what I call the AI wars. Every vendor, every hyperscaler, and every consultant, media analyst has been bombarding the market with a fairly consistent message. AI changes everything. And usually the subtext of that message is fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the FUD factor, right? Fear of being left behind or fear of obsolescence. But today we're going to flip that narrative a bit. We've titled this session The Human-Centric Factory because when we analyzed our year-end data, which we'll share a few snippets from that today, where we surveyed over 500, actually 570 industrial respondents globally. We found quite a few surprises in there. Hopefully, they'll make a lot of sense to you. And what was clear to us, at least, as I looked at a lot of that data with my colleagues that I'm about to introduce, is that the market isn't asking for AI to replace workers. It's begging for AI to save them, augment them. We'll get into that as you can kind of get a hint from the title on the screen at the moment. So let me welcome the colleagues who are going to do most of the talking today. First, and he needs no introduction, of course, a veteran of the industry. I shouldn't use that word, should I, Craig? It makes you sound like you've been around forever. Craig Resnick, our Vice President of Consulting. Craig, you've seen every automation wave since, I'm sure you're going to tell me before the PLC. Is this one actually different?
Well, let's say this. I mean, I do go back to the abacus, but I would say, all right, but I don't quite make it back to 1968 when the PLC was introduced, or 1975 when the DCS was introduced. But I certainly have witnessed the evolution of the automation platforms. I can remember around the year 2000 when ARC was actually given the challenge to say, how do we begin to help to move the market so we can leverage what we call what was the multidiscipline controller and the evolution, say, of PLCs as they became PACs, for example. They could do
Mm-hmm.
motion control and process control on the common platform. And leveraging hardware, sometimes you may use the word, to replace, physical muscle by trying to automate formally what would have been manual tasks, but also to do it on smaller platforms, on multidiscipline platforms, to worrying about things like cabinet space, worrying about things like scan time, and being able to where things would be measured in in scan time per K, let's say, on a PLC, of how fast it can go through all the I/O and make the necessary updates. And then as we're starting to move into the software world, and what we're starting to see now is the whole area of amplification of intelligence. There's a time in the controller world where the controller was as good as the measurements it was getting on pressure and level and flow and temperature, or from photo eyes, or proximity sensors to detect presence and to make the right decisions, to make decisions for valves or pumps or motors or solenoids. And now we're to the point where we're leading the software to be able to tell us, are those even the right set points? So it's
Mm-hmm.
really just the ability of applying intelligence to those platforms. And I wish I was starting my career now, because it is such an exciting time. And I don't think the people today recognize some of the challenges we had, back 25, 30, 40 years ago. We were worried about things like loop tuning. for example. But let's let the software and the intelligence and AI really let's take us to the next generation for a better world for all of us.
So, Craig, what's the autobiography called, and when is it being published? But I think what you're teeing up is really it's become a much more complex ROI conversation. It isn't actually about machines versus people, right?
Mhm.
And to give us more of that kind of human-centric perspective, I'd like to also welcome Inderpreet Shoka. You'll hear us referring to her as Preet. So if we slip into that, you'll know who I'm talking to. Um, so I'm expecting you're going to talk a lot more about your core coverage area and how you've seen that evolve um, uh, as research director for connected worker technology. So welcome, Preet.
No, thank you, Colin. Thank you for having me. It's great. We are talking about AI, and AI is not just a technology now. It's going to touch everyone's lives for sure. And in the industrial world as well, there is a greater focus on what we call digital worker or connected worker. And it's not like we have just started hearing about these terms. I think end users wanted to empower their workers for a very long time, and for some reason it wasn't happening. I would say in last 5 to 7 years, a lot of the building blocks, if you will, of the connected worker technologies, I would say technologies like IoT, cloud, sensor technologies, these technologies have improved, costs have gone down, and there are multiple factors playing here that is making connected worker a reality of today. And also, as I talk to end users and hear about their challenges, the skills gap that we are seeing in the industry and the productivity pressure that we have, with that, there is no other way. They have to invest in AI, they have to invest in connected worker technologies.
Great, thanks, Preet. And let's start with maybe a little bit of the big picture. So I guess the fourth member of the ARC team that we're going to showcase today is kind of our actual research, right? And so I want to start with kind of I guess it could well be the opening slide for our keynote at the forum next month. And this is one that we kind of a question more or less asked every year. A few of the technologies kind of evolve a little bit in the picture, but I guess it's no surprise to see what's at the top of the list again here. And here you'll see the question we asked are which technologies will have the most impact on your plant over the next 5 years? Craig, if you look at the top of this
Mhm.
chart, yep, AI and machine learning is tower over everything else. It's been in cloud, it's been in clean energy. Uh, why is the gap so wide? Give me some color around this.
Well, the interesting part is that not only is the gap so wide, because I think it's very hard to have a discussion in certainly in the manufacturing automation world or in really just the general business world without having AI as being the number one topic. But what's interesting is when you look down at the things that are below it, whether it be, clean energy technologies or cloud infrastructure, AI is like the common denominator for all of those because in reality, you're using for clean energy technology, you're using AI to optimize the grid load, for example. So AI is a key tool for clean energy technologies, no different than in cloud infrastructure. And even though certainly that's something that's been prevalent, certainly for the last several years. But think of it, if when cloud came out, it was first as a storage tool, but obviously, you need AI to leverage that data and to analyze the data properly and to take the appropriate actions. So it's really not just a situation of AI being by itself as the number one choice, but it's the common denominator that threads every one of those. And so it's not as if, for example, that it's a there's no vertical silo when it comes to AI. It's really like a horizontal layer that really kind of makes the rest of the factory work. I mean, look at even things such as robotics and IoT. I mean, from robotics perspective, that's obviously doing the physical labor. IoT, that's the sensors, or say the nerves. But AI is acting as the brain for the robots and for IoT. So it's really now a situation of how are we upgrading the brain? How are we able
Right.
to really take fully advantage of certainly because you cannot have effective robotic strategy or an effective IoT strategy without AI.
Great. And Preet, I look further down the list, and I know we're going to get some people say, "Oh, what happened to industrial metaverse and virtual reality?" So maybe is it disappointing to see it down there, given that it was all the hype? I'm thinking just 2 years ago. In fact, I think it was way up the list, right?
Yeah. No, to some extent, I agree with you, Colin, but still, I would not call it disappointing, maybe a little bit sobering, because I think what this indicates is that hype is over around the metaverse and so on. And that also, I've been covering the topic from, I would say, last about 10 years. 10 years ago, there was a lot of hype around virtual reality. And then 6 years ago, there was a hype around augmented reality. And then 3 years ago, the hype was around, industrial metaverse. And the metaverse, I think, was still targeted more toward the consumer world. And in industry, I think what was industrial metaverse, I would still think of it as interconnected digital twin that has the capability to bring in a lot of value for industrial end users. And because now I think the hype has died down, the industry is focusing on not just fancy terms now, but what are the real use cases? What are the real applications that I can implement in my plant, implement in the field that are going to bring value to me? So from that perspective, I think this 10% is pretty good because this indicate real applications, real use cases, real pilot projects that are going on out there. And I think that still has tremendous value that end users can unlock from these technologies.
Yes, I certainly don't see those things going away. And in fact, I hear more and more about these are really probably the future interfaces to a lot of what we currently label as kind of AI enabled technologies.
Yeah, can I just add on to
Yeah,
that,
go for it.
Colin? Another thing that has happened is that AI is making some of these technologies easier to adopt as well. So we'll see increasing adoption. Like I would used to talk to end users or technology providers 10 years ago, and they would focus on creating just-in-time training lessons. And it was tough to do that earlier because each and every step you'll have to create manually. And so it was not easy to create those kind of programs or training sessions. But with the introduction of AI and bringing these two technologies together, the adoption is much easier. It's easier to create training session. It's easier to create procedures. It's easier to create, augmented processes and so on. So I definitely think we'll see more adoption of these technologies in the near future as well.
Great. All right, let's move on to really the main theme of this particular webinar. We kind of talked about industrial data fabric in the first webinar, and we talked a lot about physical intelligence or industrial automation and robotics and the impact of AI on those in the second webinar. And as we kind of teed up, we're going to talk a lot more about how do people interact with all of this innovation around processes and technology. So if we look at this from our latest research, it looks like, well, the fear narrative says companies are buying all this AI and looking to replace people using AI. But Craig, I think this may tell a different story. I want you to walk us through this drivers chart and where does labor replacement really fall in terms of companies' priorities right now?
It's an it's an interesting chart because when as both you and Preet know, is when we're visiting clients and going to and doing plant tours, the workers will immediately say, is AI just going to be our replacement? But as we begin to, certainly working with the C-level executives and talking in terms of what are their real priorities, it's really trying to worry about, reducing operational costs and throughput and improving quality and safety. That is a far greater priority than obviously is a headcount reduction. The CFOs are not building an ROI model based solely on headcount reduction, because that way they're fighting the market. The real headline is, are you increasing productivity of existing lines? And that's really the dominant driver here, is how are we able to increase throughput, increase our KPIs, such as OEE, increase quality, and that's really what's going to hit the bottom line. And what's interesting is when we do our surveys, we sometimes label customers that we call would be on the leading edge as pace setters. No one is having a discussion with us to say, I want to cut that 50 workers down to 25. That's not what they're telling us. But what they're telling us is, how do we make those 50 workers as productive as 100? And that's really, I think, the way we look at AI when it comes to the workforces. We just want to make the existing workers more productive, and that's really where it's going to have the effect of the bottom line. And it's also going to provide them with greater job security, because it's going to make them far more valuable and have a longer career.
Great. And so really what you're highlighting is that productivity is the real driver. It's not, and that's not necessarily about replacing people. It's about making them more productive. And productivity dominates the averages. We're looking at the aggregate view here. But the nice thing about doing these surveys, and we do them globally, and we had a good mix of responses from around the globe. So maybe peel that back a little bit and tell me, is it the same everywhere? What is the number one driver around the world?
Yeah, so one good thing about these surveys is that we get a good response from all over the world. And Colin, I have to give you the credit. You were the one who dug deeper into the data, and that uncovered some interesting contrasting trends that we see among different regions. And it's interesting that overall, when we compile the global data, worker safety is right in the middle. But when we see some of the regional data coming from Latin America or some parts of Asia, safety rises to the top. As much as, I think around 60% of the respondents said that that's their number one goal that they want to achieve with high level of robotics and automation. So that was very interesting to see that.
Great. And we'll be sharing a lot more of this at the forum. But this was really just completed in December, so we haven't had real time to kind of create all the fancy slides and share them today. So thanks for kind of digging deeper into the data, Preet and Craig, and kind of sharing some of the insights today. But I think it's important to do that kind of deeper analysis, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the vertical industry differences that we've seen a bit later as well. And I think there's a critical distinction for any vendor listening, just in that quick analysis that you did there, Preet. You can't sell safety to a German auto plant with the same urgency you can, let's say, to a Chilean mine, right? Very different drivers.
Yeah. Absolutely, Colin. If I may add, in regions like Latin America or Asia, productivity is not their problem right now. It'll be in 20 years, but not right now. Right now, safety is something that they are paying really attention, depending upon the industry mix. We see a lot of mining there, energy, extraction. And in these kind of industries, you have to make sure that your workers are safe because you want your reputation, you don't want to get into lawsuits. And at the end, you want your license to operate. You want your workers to be safe, and you want to make sure that they are able to go back to home after their shift. And that's why we see increasing focus on robotics and automation coming from these regions.
Right. Yeah. All right. Let's maybe move on. These are the drivers. Let's maybe move on to the outcomes that we kind of found. What are they trying to achieve? And this kind of comes back to that productivity story a little bit, Craig, right? So why don't you continue your train of thought with this slide in terms of the improving productivity of workers, right?
Well, the thing is that this really, because this gets into what impacts engineering, what impacts operations, and what impacts maintenance. And I think ultimately it's that increasing, productivity across the board. Sometimes we like to use a term called, digital thread, to actually begin to tie together going from design to PLM to operations to maintenance. And AI is such a critical component, to kind of enable that digital thread. And another thing which is also, critical is the machines. The OEMs are building such technically sophisticated machines,
Right.
deployed across the board, that to maintain those machines requires a high level of diagnostics that is not something that you can just do from either just from getting information from sensors or just from having the real world experience. You really need a tool to be able to give you the kind of feedback that it takes to make to diagnose the problem, and certainly be in a position to eliminate the thou shall never have unscheduled downtime in a plant, and to make sure that an unscheduled downtime doesn't occur because of a machine problem, and trying to diagnose a problem and diagnose it fast and being able to take corrective action, immediately, because that's something that's absolutely critical. Is what can you do to minimize or eliminate all unscheduled downtime? And I think that's where this tool has such an amazing impact in being able to get to an answer quickly and get the right information to the technician quickly to make the repair and get back online.
Great. It shouldn't be, it's not a surprise to anybody that obviously is an ARC client that not only do you cover connected worker technologies, but you are very focused on asset performance management and the needs of the maintenance worker and management teams. So do you have some thoughts there on capturing and scaling expert knowledge?
No, I absolutely agree with Craig here. The way he has mentioned that how important it is not only for operations people but for maintenance people to get the right information at the right time when they need it without wasting any time. And that's what a lot of these connected worker technologies, digital worker technologies are trying to do with the help of AI. And I think, in the industry, we have been hearing about the skills gap from such a long time. We all know that boomers are retiring. And sometimes I go to a conference where one end user is saying, my 30% of my workforce is retiring in next 3 years. What I'm going to do about that? And I think challenges like these is making end users think of adopting technologies, be it IoT technology or sensor technology, cloud technology, connected worker, digital worker, and now this AI. They are looking at these kind of tools to help them with the skills gap that they're facing. These boomers are retiring, and with them, they're taking all the domain expertise that they have acquired over the years. I have met people who have mentioned that to me, that they can just listen to the pump and they know what is wrong with that. And we are going to lose that expertise. But how can we capture that? So a lot of focus in next few years from end user side will be capturing that knowledge, capturing that tribal knowledge. But at the first part of it, I would say, is the assistance. The Gen AI assistant or AI assistant would be a lot of people call co-pilots in the industry, bringing the right information at the right time when they need it. So I think that's going to be the focus in next few years for sure.
Okay. And that aligns very closely with our industrial co-pilots data, right? In fact, it's one of the areas where we found that IT, OT, and business leaders, so that was another kind of slice and dice that we did. We always try and do that because we quite often see different language used for the same thing or different priorities across those teams, which very often are the real cause for slowing things down and not driving the adoption or not being able to succeed in the scale out process. And I think you took a look a little bit, Preet, at some of the differences in the verticals on how they viewed co-pilots, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the difference is that everybody is going to be looking at all these technologies. Some will be more focused on one versus the other. For example, the industrial equipment manufacturer, there we see absolutely high demand for, co-pilots. I think they highlighted 60% of them preferred that too. And that indicates why that is the preference of that vertical, is that they make one-off equipment which you cannot really automate very well, but at least what you can do is that empower your frontline workers with the knowledge that comes with Copilot, that comes with the AI.
Right. And I forgot to say that the IT, OT, and the business audience kind of agreed on roughly 40% as the number that prioritized co-pilots, but it was 60% in IEM, and there was again some other differences when we looked at vertical responses. I kind of want to close our data portion of the conversation, and obviously we've got a lot more data than we could. I think I'm going to be writing up that data for probably the whole of the first quarter this year. There's so many nice nuggets to pull out of that. But let's have a look at it's kind of a building on the first chart, right? We took a look at what were the most impactful technologies, right? And it kind of a little bit distorted by just and Craig, you kind of explained the why AI was so far ahead of everything else. But let's dig into this because this is framed slightly differently, which is what's your progress on implementing these technologies now, and where do you expect to be 3 years from now?
Well, it's interesting because if you look at let's say the dark blue bars and, certainly cloud infrastructure and 5G networks and AI again and sustainability, industrial analytics, and, industrial Internet of Things. This is really, for the last 3 years, people beginning to build that foundation, kind of building that infrastructure to kind of, now begin to have the connectivity paths to really leverage it. So the way we tend to look at it is, okay, this is now that's the foundation. And without that foundation for the next 3 years, it's harder to go forward. And that's when you start to look at the lighter blue bars. And that's when you start looking at, kind of that as you're making that shift from that infrastructure stage to the AI, ML, and digital twins, for example. And I think now you're going from that infrastructure phase to the application phase. Because now that they have that data, now they can truly leverage AI. Without having that foundation, it's not going to be very much help. I mean, it's kind of like if you take, for example, take things like historians. I mean, people have had terabytes of data to work with within their plants for certainly a large number of years. But they didn't have the AI tools and the right type of processing speeds to be able to handle that volume of data and to convert data into meaningful information.
Or the costs, right? The costs have come
Correct.
way down, right? To
Exactly.
actually do that.
Exactly. So that's the reason why we see things such as digital twin. We certainly expect that to be, 3 years from now, that's going to be up towards the top because you needed that infrastructure to be able to leverage it. And that's the reason why it's so important not to just look at the dark blue bars, but to look at those light blue bars and see what's coming. But you needed that infrastructure to be able to apply it.
Yeah,
And
and I'm
we're
looking at
very,
those. Yeah, I'm looking at those light blue bars, and I think the top three. We should probably. I think we have another slide that does actually sort them by the light blue bar. But yes, it looks like physical robots. Surprise,
yep,
surprise, right?
surprise, surprise.
Digital twin and simulation, and metaverse and augmented virtual reality
Mhm.
suddenly don't look like they are gone, right?
No.
So perhaps I don't know if you wanted to say anything else, Craig, but I was going to ask Preet to perhaps jump in with her thoughts as well.
I mean, I think the thing is, see, with physical robots, I mean, maybe it's just because of looking at events such as, the CES that just occurred, and how many times have you heard, from humanoids all the way to AMRs and AGVs? But I mean, how prevalent that discussion, that discussion is today. But again, you can't have that discussion without AI. So again, another one I think besides digital twin that you're going to be soaring to the top, probably going from the 3-year plan to, to kind of the top, having people having that infrastructure for physical robots and digital twins in place, within that next 3-year window.
Preet?
Yeah. No, I of course, when the results came, I was very curious to see where we have industrial metaverse and wearables. And as Craig said, it seems like with cloud and analytics, IoT technology, these are kind of the foundation which a lot of companies have invested in. Um, and that's why you see, the bars, dark blue bars, really long. But when it comes to wearables, industrial metaverse, there is a lot of scope for investment in these kind of technologies, but it does seem like there is a greater interest because a lot of end users indicate they'll be investing in these technologies in next 3 years. And I just wanted to highlight something I noticed when we asked the questions. We put wearables and frontline worker connectivity together. But I do want to highlight a little bit of difference between I'm seeing because wearables, there was, I would say, great interest, 5 years, 7 years ago. And a lot of forward-looking end users, they did invest in the technologies, wearable technology, but it was very expensive. It was not that easy to use. It was not very comfortable, so the use was limited to certain situations only. You cannot wear a headgear, for the whole day and do your job. We also saw low-cost alternatives as well, but they were still not that easy to use. So what we have seen in the last few years, the interest in wearables have gone down a little bit, but interest in frontline worker connectivity continues to grow because a lot of the benefits that you get from some of these technologies, like augmented reality, you do not need a specific a headgear for that. You can leverage your smartphone, you can leverage, tablets in the field for that. So that interest continues to grow. Virtual reality, for your training sessions, you'll definitely need some kind of special device. But for other purposes, like for remote collaboration, or if you want to do training sessions, or if you want to have your workers connected to your databases, to their colleagues, to different sensors, that you can easily do with the help of smartphones and tablets. So we definitely see a growing interest in frontline worker connectivity. Wearables, I think wearables are the future. Will everything, even in the consumer world, industrial world, we'll be seeing a lot of wearables, but not in the next 3 years.
Okay, thanks for that additional perspective. And I think you've highlighted why you should come to the forum because the data only tells you so much, right? It tells you to some degree um, that data really gives us the what and a little bit of the why, but it certainly doesn't tell us the how, right? And for that, I think you need to hear from us, frame your questions to us in person, but also talk to your peers in the industry. And that's really what the forum is all about. So talking about the forum, throwing some details on the screen. Hopefully, we've convinced you you better get registered today. It's not that far away, February 9th to the 12th in Orlando, and I believe the hotel bookings kind of are closing, or at least the preferred rates you need to get in this week, I believe. But if we didn't convince you today that we have lots of new things to share and conversations to have, and you might want to talk to your peers about where they stack up on their investment priorities and what they're doing. We did kick this off with myself as the host for this series, talking with Mike Guilfoy about industrial data fabrics, and it's important not just to the factory and the unified namespace and everything you have to do to kind of leverage those, what did you say, Craig, terabytes of data that we all have tucked away, right? But also in other areas of the business, other people want to see some of that data. So how do you do that? We've talked a lot about the industrial data fabric, and it's equally important to supply chain and to sustainability. That data is required by everybody, and it's required to make that AI a reality. It's only as good as the data quality and the data you can actually leverage. So we talked a lot about in the first webinar. Patrick, if I recall, didn't quite make it. He was sick, so I actually ended up doing this one with my colleague, Greg Gorbach, and we talked through a lot of the robotics side of this. So if you wanted to hear a little bit about our ARC's physical intelligence taxonomy, which kind of looks at all the different form factors of robots, all the different software from the edge to the new large behavior models and physics-informed neural networks and all those kind of software complexities that you need for this future of robotics, then we gave you some teasers in that one. And we will have folks like Boston Dynamics will be at the forum. So Patrick is running a dedicated robotics session. And then, of course, today, I don't need to repeat this one. You just heard from us. But I think let's talk a little bit and share with everybody in case they aren't convinced they should come and join us. Maybe let's talk a little bit. I'll kick off because I'm talking. I'll share that I'm hosting the customer exec panel on the Tuesday morning after the keynotes. I can share that our keynotes will be from PepsiCo. So if you watched CES 2026 and Siemens keynotes there, you probably saw Siemens. I almost forgot his name there. I would have not been forgiven. Roland Busch talked about PepsiCo and work that PepsiCo was doing with both Siemens and NVIDIA. We will have PepsiCo keynoting, also have a keynote from Jabil. So two very different but global manufacturers that are, I would view them as pace setters in terms of their adoption of AI and how they're scaling it out, but very different approaches, some commonalities in terms of supply chain, for example, and using AI in their supply chain. On my panel, I will be hosting them along with NVIDIA Siemens and AWS. So we'll have a nice mix of customers and some of the major movers and shakers in the AI space, really on my Tuesday panel. And then I do have data fabric sessions with some more customers talking about how they're tackling the data fabric challenge. And I have an industrial AI session where we'll be more focused on AI use cases. But I know you've got some interesting things lined up. Who wants to go first? I think Craig, do you want to talk about what you are,
Okay. Yeah,
what you have lined up?
yeah, I have some sessions on smart manufacturing. Where we'll be looking at companies like Toyota will be speaking. We'll have, Keurig Dr. Pepper speaking as well in that session on some, showing us some of the progress that they're making with their digital transformation. And what's interesting when we talk about the auto industry is there's in certain parts of the world, certainly in areas like in regions like China, where you have massive adoption of EVs and rapid growth, some of the largest EV companies in the in the world. But one of the things that's also interesting, which we'll talk a little bit about the forum, is how AI really helps companies become more flexible because at the same time, some of the American companies are actually shifting away from some of their EV investments in the short term, based on based on changes in tax policy, for example. So how do they shift from maybe some of their EV investments, maybe and shifting that over to hybrid investments? But knowing the fact that maybe as going forward, there might be a time that they need to change that manufacturing capacity from hybrid back to EV. But they need the tools to keep them flexible, and they need the tools to be able so they can respond to changes in whether it be tax policy, changes in market demand, changes in tariffs, but to be how to have that level of flexibility. And I think that's something that we're going to be talking a lot about at the forum. And another session that I have is an operational resilience, where we'll have companies, let's say like International Paper speaking, ExxonMobil speaking, because resilience means, are you taking the necessary steps when it comes to being able to keep your company, going and thriving, based on changes to supply chain, based on changes in issues with geopolitics, based on issues with climate, the ability to procure energy. So it's a matter of how do we, it's something that really arose, 6 years ago with the pandemic, is how do we keep going, and how are we prepared for any potential, changes, disasters, to access to plants, to access to supply chain, and really rapidly changes in the market, whether it caused from climate issues to geopolitics, but keeping your company resilient. And now you certainly cannot have a business strategy in the boardroom without having an operational resilience strategy. So we'll be talking about that in some of those sessions as well.
Yeah, and before I ask you to share what you've got lined up, Preet, you just reminded me that I think on Wednesday for the Wednesday keynotes and customer exec panel, Mike Guilfoy has, I believe, Rolls-Royce and RTX lined up, and they'll talk a lot about kind of modernizing their architecture for what I like to call at least demand-driven manufacturing and demand-driven supply chains, right? So really, how do you modernize that supply chain with all this new technology, including, of course, AI that we've been talking about today? So just wanted to throw that in while I remembered, or Mike would shoot me if I didn't mention that one. So Preet, what do you have lined up?
A few interesting sessions. We'll definitely have a dedicated session where we'll talk about the digital worker technologies, connected worker case studies. we'll have a chemical end user, automotive end user. They'll come and share their stories, what were the challenges they were facing, and what are the technologies that they are implementing to empower their workforce, their frontline workers. So that's, I think, will be very interesting. And of course, AI will be part of every discussion. I have 2 sessions on asset performance management, basically talking about technologies that help end users manage their assets better. And of course, AI is becoming a major component of APM as well. So we are here from end users, how they are leveraging AI with their APM initiatives. And forum is also a great learning opportunity for us analysts as well. But I'm really looking forward to hearing from end users and from the technology providers is how they're helping build the trust in AI. And we have a dedicated panel session for that as well. Because buying technology is one thing, everybody's trying to get into AI, have AI, but unless you can build the confidence in your workforce that you are able to leverage some of the recommendation that AI is telling you, it's not going to be of much use to the end user who are investing a lot of money in it. So I definitely want to hear from the providers, what are they doing on that side, and from end users, what are they doing on their end.
Great, thanks, Preet. And we are just about at time. For everyone listening, if you haven't registered yet, go to arcweb.com/events if you don't know where to find the registration, but I'm sure you've got emails somewhere, right, with all the details on how to register. This is our 30th year of hosting this in-person event, and it's shaping up to be probably one of our best yet in terms of speakers and who's going to be there. Thanks for joining us today. A little summary there on the left-hand side of some of the key themes we talked about and data-driven insights from the three of us today. If you've got questions, and I hope you do, and I'm sure you do, if you don't and you know it all already, then I want to talk to you and explain it all to me. Then bring those questions with you to the ARC forum. And with that, I'm going to wrap things up. Many thanks to Preet, insightful as always, and to our, I'm still waiting for that autobiography title and Amazon link, Craig. So get me that as soon as you've got that ready. But thanks, Craig. So thanks everybody for now.
Thank you, Colin, for having us.
Thank you so much. Can't wait to see you all in Florida.
See you there.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.